All right. Thanks for coming this morning. In this presentation, we have Steve from Northshore School District presenting on Tame the IP address space beast with DDI, DNS.DHCP and IP management. So I hand it over to Steve.
Okay. So like I say, I'm from the Northshore School District. And pretty much, if you have any of these questions, you have these issues, you may want to consider some sort of IP address management, or DDI is the term. So how many people have had IP address conflicts on their network? Somebody throws on a little HVAC controller and takes down your server, right? How about a subnet running out of space? Yeah, that's a big one for us right now because we used to be mostly wired and now we're all wireless, right? So we have to repartition our IP space. That can be a lot of fun, right? That's kind of a nice job to do. Do you need to audit changes? Why the heck did my server IP all of a sudden get renamed or disappeared? It's out of DNS. Who did it? Well, what happened, right? I would like to delegate some of this stuff so I'm not the single point of failure to do it all. That's another big issue that we run into. At Northshore, we use ACLs to control limited access to our wireless, i.e. if we don't know your MAC address, you're not going to get onto our private network. It's a real pain if I have to do that all. If I can give help desk to do that, so when somebody calls in, they verify, yeah, okay, we'll put you on the network, I don't have to do it, right? And then finally, Northshore, for many years, we ran a bind system, which meant that I was the only one that could make changes to it, which again is a very bad idea. You want to have multiple people accessing it and making changes to it. Okay, so we're going to talk about a definition first, then I'll talk about why you might want it now. And there's some changes in our environment over the last 4 or 5 years that have really made it necessary. What it can do for you, that's going to be the majority of the talk, and then when you should consider it. So there's some parameters that if you haven't reached these, you're probably not worth it for you yet. We'll talk over some of the options that are out there, and then I'm going to give you a demo of the tool that I use and go through how it does some of these things. Any questions? Okay. Do feel free to ask questions as we go along. So DDI is basically the combination of DNS, DHCP, and IPAM management in one place. I make a change, it reflects in all 3 places. I don't have to remember to update my spreadsheet and then my DNS and then my DHC scope. I don't have to do that. I do it in one place, everything gets updated. It's all magic. So the chance of errors go way down. It does all the provisioning, deprovisioning, IP subnet changes, everything gets done. You don't have to worry about wandering around various things. The solutions can range from simple IP management. You can find open source solutions like IPPlan that'll do this, all the way up to the really fancy things like Infoblox or something that does everything. And they can actually work with your existing servers. If you're a Microsoft shop, fine. You can buy one of these. It'll just take over control of your Microsoft DNS and DHCP servers via the Microsoft API. So you don't have to throw away what you have. Same thing with a bind server if you're a bind shop. Or they will provide their own. You got a lot of options with these solutions. So why do we need it? The first thing is Internet of Things. So I think people have kind of heard that, where everything these days, your lights, your stove hoods, your elevators, your refrigerators, all your HVAC equipment, all are now on your network. Pretty much your high school, anything about it, your doors, your security cameras, everything has got a network IP address. So before, we used to deal with a couple hundred, couple thousand IPs. Now you're dealing with 10, 20, 100,000 IPs at a big district. So you're changing from something that you can handle in a spreadsheet to something that it's pretty difficult to handle that many IPs. So that's really the first reason why we want to start. You might want to look at this because there's just so many more of them. IHS, which is a service like Gartner, forecasts that we're going to be at close to 75 billion of these little weird devices running around on our networks in another couple of years. So we're somewhere around 10, 15 billion right now, and it just keeps going up, and it's not going to slow down. I've heard things like pretty soon the boxes that people ship you things like this will have an IP on it so they can track it, right? Clothing, packaged foods, student ID cards are all going to have IPs on them another 5 or 6 years. The second thing is the cloud. It used to be the only IPs you managed were the things that were on your network. Well, heck, now I've got stuff in Amazon. I've got stuff in Azure. I've got stuff in Google Cloud. I have to manage those IPs somehow, right? So now I not only manage my own that are on my network, I manage IPs on other networks that I've got to keep track of somehow. What's going on? You know, why did that vendor all of a sudden disappear? Oh, they changed their IP and stuff on it, and they didn't tell me, or something happened, right? Or I have to update my SPF record so that vendor can email through me, and I've got to keep track of their IPs. So this is the other big driver for DDI, is the fact that you're not just managing the things on your own network, you're managing things on who knows how many networks that you might be dealing with. Another big driver is virtualization, which is this kind of it. You know, if you're virtualized, it's actually a lot easier to spin up several new machines to do a test or something than it is to actually take one machine and try to handle multiple services on it, right? Which means you're going to have more IPs to deal with. So what can it do for you? The first thing is change tracking. Any change that is made to an IP by an account, you will know. So every single thing that gets changed in your IP space, your subnets, your DHCP scopes, anything, it'll keep a record of it. And that is actually really useful. You know, every now and then somebody makes a mistake, or they do something you want, or the change wasn't quite done correctly, you can go back and figure out what happened. Then you can work with the person to make sure that next time they do it right, or you can update the documentation because you had bad documentation, right? They just followed the documentation. But it gives you that audit trail. In larger companies, this actually becomes a compliance issue. They need to know what's going on at all times. School districts, we don't seem to have that problem yet. Along with change tracking, you can revert the data. So once you know what got changed and how, you can revert it. So one of the problems with our bind system was that we'd make a change, and then we'd say, oh, crap, now I have to go put that server back, but I forget what IP it was on. I remember the name, but I forget the IP. Now I can sit there. I just look back the change log. Oh, yeah, it was on this IP. I throw it back in. It literally takes seconds to go recover a server IP if it got deleted accidentally. The next thing is delegation. The more stuff I can push out on other people, or as my boss says, on the people who are paid appropriately to do that job. He doesn't want me just doing data entry. That's a really bad use of my skills and time. So he wants me to push that out on other people. So for example, our help desk does all the ACL entries and stuff for our NSD private network. We don't do that anymore. Unless we get a list of like 1,000 machines, then I'll import them in. But other than that, all the one-offs, they take care of it. At the same time, I don't want help desk to have full access to everything in there because they may click the wrong button and trash my network. So most of these systems have a way that you can expose just the part you want to the person that needs to do that function, that role. In our system, we have a system architect, which is me. I have full access to everything. My server team can add and change IPs. They cannot touch any subnets. They cannot change the structure of my IP address management. My help desk team can't do any of that, but they can change the ACLs on one particular ACL that allows people to get access to my NSD private network. And I can play with that all I want. What else do we got here? Yeah. So delegation is big. IP subnet reconfiguration. This is one of the biggest wins. So we went through one of these when we bought the product about 2 years ago. We're going to be going through another one over the next 2 years because we didn't do a good job of planning, and we just totally getting wiped out by all of the IoT devices. And for me, what we do, we have a little mini test network. So I've got 35 sites that are essentially the same, and we have a little mini test network, and I practice on that. And then once I get that working, and I basically create Excel spreadsheets, and I upload them, and I download them, and I practice a few times, and then I literally just push a button, and in 5 minutes, I've reconfigured my entire network. Everything, every subnet, every DHCP scope is literally reconfigured in 5 minutes. Rather than it used to be like, I'm going to sit there for a good chunk of a Friday night fixing up all the little gotchas. That is a huge time saver. Plus, if I screw up, like we do a reconfiguration and for some reason the router person or something says, man, this isn't working, we didn't get our end all put back together, bang, 5 minutes, I'm back to where we were. So what used to be equal amount of time on the router networking side and on the system admin side, now it's for me 5 minutes. That poor gal is still taking hours and hours to reconfigure all the routers and everything else. I wish she could find a tool like this. I really do. It will mostly stop IP conflicts. So one of these things these tools do is they don't allow you to enter two things on the same IP. They flat out, you try and do that, it comes up a big error saying, nope, you can't do that. You got a problem. It doesn't stop IP conflicts when somebody just hops on your network and says, oh, cool, I'm going to assign this IP to this thing. It won't stop those. It won't stop people who get on your network and say, hey, really neat, I'm going to run a DHCP server and shut down your local school or your local site. It won't stop that. There are certain things it can't stop. But it does stop a lot of just data entry type errors. So to combat those people who just stick things on your network, these systems, not all of them, will have a way to do scanning. And what they do is you say, go scan that network, and they come back and they say, okay, guess what? You've got 6 new devices on there that we have no clue because they're not in our database. And they will flag them, and then you can go off and say, all right, what's going on here? And Nmap, if anybody has ever used it, is a really cool thing because it will actually give you a pretty good idea of what that device is, whether it's a computer, an HVAC controller, an Intel device, who knows. But that will typically give you enough information that okay, it's probably something having to do with HVAC system. I need to go talk to capital projects or maintenance and find out what are they doing. Why did that device appear? We're pretty fortunate. We don't have to worry about nasty devices on our network. Most kids aren't to the stage of like, oh, let's go plug in this USB key and let's crash the network. We're fortunate. We don't have to worry about that. But in the future, you may have to. And this would stop things. Yeah?
Is that a proactive method or is that a reactive thing? Like, will it tell you that, hey,
this is more of a proactive thing in that it goes out, like right now we will scan our server network and our router management network and a few others that we are really concerned about.
So you'll actually go out and scan them?
Yes.
Okay.
The product I'm using does not do this automatically, but it does have an API, which we'll talk about next. And I'm going to write this into there so that every day it goes out and does a scan and then sends me a little thing, hey, I found these new things. IPPlan, which is free, does do this function. And that's what we're using now. And then we have somebody look through the results and say, guess what? We've got some new things here. We need to go figure out what they are. So the next thing, most of these services have got an API of some sort, a REST API, a SOAP API, something. What that allows us is to program them. So if you go to Amazon now and you go say, I'm going to go fire up a new machine in Amazon. Amazon is basically using something like this, not the one we're talking about here, but they're using something like this because they will fire up, provision a machine all automatically. You don't give it an IP, right? They fire up and provision a firewall. They fire, provision your own little private network with a router and a switch. And it's all done via some set of APIs that they're communicating with some sort of IPAM DDI system to do all this. Right? So you can do this on your network if you want to. If you're a big enough school district, you may want to. We're not big enough. I am going to use that API, though, to sit there and get the scanning portion into it. DNS IPAM reconciliation. How many people have this problem? You got your spreadsheet, right? And you look at it, and after 4 years, you're looking at it, you say, that machine hasn't been around for 3 years? Where did that one come from, right? And your DNS is totally out of sync with your supposedly accurate document of what it is. So most of these systems will have a way to reconcile that. And they will say, hey, you've got a problem here. I have it in my IP database, it's not in my DNS. Or it's in my DNS and it's not in my IP database. You may want to do something about that. That's a problem you need to check into. This is probably one of the coolest things. The mid-range and the high-end systems will actually manage all your existing structure. So you don't have to throw away what you have. If you're a Microsoft shop, if you're a Bind shop, whatever it is, you can keep it. The lower-end systems don't have this, but the higher-end ones do. And this is really, really nice. So, for example, we use our existing AD structure, plus we use their DNS and DHCP servers. But I can use all my existing AD stuff for all my Windows boxes. Another advantage of this, how many people have loaded on Windows 2016 and Windows 10? Have you downloaded the RSAT tools for Windows 10? Try it. There's no more DNS GUI. Microsoft killed it. So either you get to use PowerShell to control your DNS server on Microsoft now, or you're logging into the server all the time, which I'd rather not do, or you're going through a whole bunch of registry hacks to get that DNS GUI back onto your Windows 10. Right, yeah, I'm not sure why Microsoft decided to do that, but that's their latest version. It happened in the last year fall creator update. The third solution, if you have one of these things, they'll do it for you. So we're using the GUI tool on our DDI solution to actually manage our Windows servers now. We also use it to manage a DNS server that's sitting up in the cloud. So a bunch of my services have moved out to the cloud. I run my own DNS servers. If I'm off for some reason, nobody can get to all my services up in the cloud. So I just stuck a DNS server up in the cloud. Finally, another good trick is full-text search. You type in an IP address or name, it searches every single record. It searches all the DNS, all the DHCP. It searches all the IP address management records, which is really nice because you can then track down, is this a C name? Is it a DNS? Is it, what it is? And it finds them all. So you can verify that, oh yes, that IP is actually in all my DNS servers. It's located in them all. It's in my external and my internal, for example. It does dynamic DNS. If you're a Microsoft shop, you get this too. If you're not a Microsoft shop, you probably don't have this. The idea is that whenever anybody gets a DHCP address, I take that address and the name that I get from the client, and I stick it in the DNS. So why is that nice? Well, all of our clients have a barcode, asset barcode. That's their name. Now, instead of having my help desk sit there and have to call up, talk to the teacher and say, oh, you need to type in some stuff, or you need to go up to the network thing and figure out what your IP is, all they say is, read me your barcode off your machine, and then they can get right on it with just the barcode, because that's in DNS now. That alone really simplified a lot of our help desk work. Eventually, we're all going to have to go to IPv6. Hopefully not until a long time after I've left this earth. I really don't want to do that. So one of the problems with IPv6 is it's not human-friendly at all. IPv4, you can look at an address and we can comprehend what it is. IPv6, you can't. You have to have some system like this to manage IPv6. These systems will basically make that transition much, much, much easier. So the way I see it happening is right now we lock down our networks. Eventually we're all going to be like Salem Kaiser. We're going to lock down our server pool and everything else is wide open. And pretty soon, instead of being wide open going through a firewall, it's going to be wide open with IPv6 addresses, and all those bazillion Internet of things will have their own address on the Internet. It won't be natted to the Internet. That's where things are going. If you look at countries who have really done this, like Korea, for example, is mostly IPv6, that's what they're doing. You don't need NAT anymore. You're just on the Internet. So in our district, we aren't quite there yet. Salem Kaiser is the only district I know has gotten farthest along that path. But I'm suspecting that you'll, especially as more and more of your services end up in the cloud, you're going to just say, okay, it's just not worth the hassle. I'm just going to sit there and do it this way. DNS Firewall. So DNS started out a long time ago, before we even cared about security. So DNS is one of the most hackable protocols out there. It is really dirt simple to sit there and put up a DNS reflector or something and just shut down somebody. Example, we actually had we assume it was a kid, we don't know for sure, testing period last year in 2017. Every time the test started at this middle school, we got hit with a major DDoS attack. That was 10 o'clock. On about 1 o'clock when the testing time ended, the DDoS attack stopped. This went on for 2 or 3 weeks, and we are doing everything we can with our ISP and everything to get it, because we're online testing. It shut down the testing. And we found out that for $5, $10, you can hire firms that'll do this for you. And they're using a DNS reflector attack, and it just crams packets. And there's not much you can do about it. And you talk to your ISP, and they will do what they can to slow it down, but the attack is coming from so many different directions, it's a really hard thing to deal with. So a DNS firewall will stop some of this from happening. The other thing that we use it for is if you have iPads and you want to control when they get updated, what you do is you make the Apple update server disappear for a while, right? They can't update if they can't find it. So I have a rule in my DNS firewall that says, hey, if you're going to the Apple update server, it doesn't return anything. It doesn't exist. And then when we've got the update all, we're sure it will work correctly and it won't break any of the software we're using, we just flip it back on and everything gets updated. We're probably going to start doing that with Windows 10 here, because Windows 10 is starting to have the same problem. They're pushing out the updates whether you want them or not, right? And we'd like to have a little bit of control over that. So I just make their update server disappear off the network. Or if we have a problem with something going on with a certain IP, we can just make it disappear. We get lots and lots of reports and statistics out of these systems, which is really pretty cool. I can tell when a place starts to fill up. I can see how many of my different types of IPs I'm using, how many CNAMEs, how many aliases, how many subnets I got, all kinds of wonderful reports and statistics. The biggest reason we would use this is, what's the impact if I go to BYOD, or if I go to one-to-one? What type of impact will I have? So those are all the major functions you'll get out of a DDI type solution. Any questions on those? Nope. Okay. In Gartner, they basically said you should consider a DDI solution when you have more than 25,000 active IPs. If your district is that big, definitely start thinking about this, because you're going to be spending more time trying to manage it, and you may want to offload some of that work into software. Or if you're preparing to go with IPv6, which we're not, or if you keep having DNS DHCP issues. if you find that you're always debugging these sorts of issues, you may want to consider a DDI solution. One of the key criteria when you get one is how are they going to migrate from your existing mess into their solution. So you definitely want to, you ask the vendor and make sure that they give you a detailed plan of this is how we're going to do it. And make sure it makes sense to you. Ask a bunch of dumb questions. When I went to our current solution, I did not do a good enough job on this. So I was sold one thing by the salesman. When the consultant came out, the first time he saw what he was doing, he just started cussing. Because I have what they call a split DNS, where I have one server that services both external and internal. Those are much more difficult to set up. They would much rather have you have external on one box and internal on another. And because you want redundancy, you need 2 external, 2 internal, which would have doubled the cost of my licensing. Being a school district, I didn't want to do that. But there was a bunch of confusion when we first got started. There was a lot of confusion. They didn't do a good job of explaining to me what I needed to prep so they could actually do the migration. So I totally failed on that one, miserably. So that's why make sure you work with that consultant. Talk to how are you guys going to do this? What else? Gartner also says it could reduce your operation expenses by up to 50%. I don't think that's true in a school district. I think it is probably true in a large, like Exxon or something like that, right? And the other thing is once you get one, you're stuck with it. Because DDI is so embedded to everything else you do. Everything depends upon an IP address around here, right? So once you start using it, you're not going to change. It's going to be really hard to change. So go ahead and get a demo, get a trial one, play with it for a while. NSD, we've got 43,000 active IPs. I've got 510 subnets and 652 pools, scopes, DHCP scopes. So we fit really well into this. This, for us, is a really good fit. I'll talk a little bit about why we picked efficient IP in a little bit. Just so you know that our cost, our capital cost, which includes 3 years of support, was $21,000. So we're talking $7,000 a year. The ongoing cost is going to be a couple grand a year. And for us, we feel it was really worth it because I was able to offload a lot of work to other people. I'm not a bottleneck anymore. My boss feels a lot more confident that if I win the lottery, he will still be able to manage the system and keep things up and running. So it just made a big, big plus for us. Okay, when you go look at the DDI market, there are 4 big hitters. These guys own 80% of the market. The problem is they're also $100,000 or more. So you're not going to buy one of these unless somebody decides to give it to you. But you will see these names pop up all the time. And I can tell you right now, unless you have a lot of money, you just don't even bother with it. They're also very complex. They assume you have a full-time person that this is all they are going to do. They will not do anything else. To manage one of these things is a full-time job. So that's about all I want to say about those guys. If you're a really small installation, Microsoft has a free IPAM. It's not DDI, but a free IPAM solution that you may want to check out. It doesn't do everything of all those functions I listed. It does do a few of them, and it's a good way to get started. You can start to play with the idea. But it comes free with Server 2012 and Server 2016.
2012 too, though.
What?
2012 R2 at work, it has it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. It does have a lot of limitations. There's open source systems like ACPEnw. So some of the negatives with the Microsoft one is you have to manage everything separately. You still have to use DNS and DHCP and IPAM separately. It's not a unified pane of glass. It only works with Microsoft solutions. It's relatively hard to change subnets with that idea. You've got to do a lot of it by hand. And it can be a bit complex to get working, and Microsoft still hasn't figured out how much support they're going to provide for it. so you might have problems getting help. If you haven't noticed, over the last 2 years, Microsoft is undergoing an incredible change, mostly for the positive. The new guy that runs Microsoft, I can't say enough about the guy. I know a lot of people who work there, being up in Washington, and he has the culture change he's done there is absolutely unreal. But as part of that, they are definitely dropping a lot of products. Like Windows Storage Server for on-prem is now, forget about it. You're not going to find it anymore. It's still in their catalog. You cannot buy it. Windows 2016 on-prem, or Windows whatever in the future on-prem, they want you to go to the cloud. They don't want you to do anything on-prem anymore. They're making all their money off their cloud. They aren't making anything else anywhere else. You can't buy Office 20. Well, the next version of Office, you're going to be buying 365. They aren't going to sell you an on-prem version. So some things I don't like, but in general, I really like where they're going. The product that we ended up with is this French company called ACPEnw. They only do IP management, which is kind of nice. The big four only do IP management. Some of the other ones I'll talk about in the next slide, it's one little bit of their larger portfolio, and you don't know how much attention they're going to pay to it, right? So we looked at all the options. This one really was a good fit for us. They basically do all the functions of DDI except for the network scanning, which I said, okay, I can get around that. I can write my own scanner. They have local support in the U.S., even though they're based in France. And the one thing I have found with them is that once you give them a problem, they stick on it until it gets fixed, period. And because DDI is real critical, we got 7x24 support. If this thing goes down at 3 a.m., I get them on the phone, and they're on the phone with me working through it. Because your network doesn't run if your DNS servers don't work, right? And they've had some issues, but I've been really happy overall with their support. Again, the initial install was pretty bad, partly because of me and partly because of them. We just didn't work out. But that consultant that did the job actually works in the support office, and since then he's been absolutely fantastic. I hired him back to help us make some changes. Went really, really smooth. One of the nice things they do is they download an entire copy of the database. So if you have a problem, the first thing they do is say, hey, give us a copy of your database, and then they run your network in their office. So they can really see what's going on. Oh, yeah, we replicate exactly what's going on. Let's go figure out what's happening here, right? Which makes it a lot easier to debug and fix things. The only downside I've seen is their latest version has some sort of a slowdown in the GUI. And so you might have to wait 20 or 30 seconds to get a response. And we aren't too sure why. They know it's a problem. They're working it. They haven't figured out what's going on yet. In terms of functionality, though, everything is there. Everything works. Their support, like I say, has been fabulous. I've been really happy with them. Some of the other options. TCP Wave is used for cloud services only, so that doesn't really apply to us. Men and Mice is a overlay on Microsoft servers. If you're a Microsoft shop, I would definitely look at those guys. And you want something more than the Microsoft, real simple one. If you want a true DDI solution that ties everything together in one panel, and your Microsoft shop, Men and Mice would be one you should look at. SolarWinds has one. That's another one you may want to look at. The difference is the SolarWinds is part of their conglomeration of products, and I don't know about you, but I have Web Help Desk, and their support for that is lacking, to say in the least. I have no clue how they would support their DDI solution. Maybe good, maybe bad. I'd be nervous. .NET is built at the University of Oregon, right here in this state, and it's an open source one. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with Microsoft. So those are some other options you may want to consider and look at. In NSD, since we're a hybrid, we use a lot of Bind and Windows Active Directory. None of these fit us, so they were all out. None of the expensive ones fit us. Only that efficient IP that seems to sit in the middle. That was the only one I found that was a good fit. Okay, we're going to try and do a demo now. what I've done is I've actually downloaded a copy of the database onto my machine, so I'm not going to use the network. I'm basically going to be all local. Now let's see if I can't get this thing fired up. We need to shrink it. Oh, that's interesting. What happened here? It's lost my... Saying I'm connected, but it's not working. There we go. Come on, find me again, please. Oh, that's really fascinating. Oh, you gonna find me now? Huh. Well, let's do this. That's up and running. Source computer, searching all sources, no signal. Oh, crap. Well, let me try doing the classic reboot and see what happens.
So in your opinion, how large of an entity would you want to be before you consider this?
Like I say, at least 25,000
You agree with that?
active IPs, yeah. We were around 35, and we just started having all these issues. You know, we had problems. Pretty much every problem that was listed there, we ran into. So yeah, you need at least that many. So let's go ahead and shut down a few windows.
Go through the sources.
You see something
Is there
there?
a source button on there that you can cycle through?
I've looked. When you move your laptop, it dropped down.
Yeah, it's right here.
I guess I didn't pray to the demo gods enough.
You accounted for the thing that normally would be a problem.
You know, you practice and why all of a sudden did I need
I was going to say, move it all on the red button.
They didn't screw in the VGA code, that's crazy.
Okay, so first we'll do this. We'll bring this guy back up. As soon as my laptop comes up, we'll try it again. Laptop back up. This guy. Documents, presentations, DDI.
I like the IP stuff.
I got that up and running. Leave closed. Okay, got that and running. Now let's see if this is going to work. I don't know what was working before. Running auto setup. Are you going to see me? Yes, yes. Okay, let's do that. Come on. There we go. Okay. So this part, I'll go my mouse. There it is. You guys don't need to see that. All right. So we're going to fire up. You do need VMware Virtual Workstation. I have a copy of my software here, so I'm going to power it on. This software actually runs on FreeBSD if you want to know, but it's a black box for all intents and purposes. You don't have to ever look at it. You just push the button, up it comes, right? The updates are actually done via the GUI, and they are so sweet. So I actually have 3 boxes. I have my master box with my database. I have 2 boxes that actually do all the serving that are split DNS servers. So inside, outside, and DHCP on both ones. Plus I have an AD box, and I have, well, 2 AD boxes in my AD domain, and then I have one other one that is a copy of their software running on CentOS up in Amazon. So everything gets managed. The really nice thing is when I update my main one, it gets updated. If the update fails, I can roll back. I'm not touching the ones that are doing all the work. So I can update it. If something goes wrong, I roll it back, and then I haven't touched anything, right? Then if it works, I just say, okay, now update server number 1. Updates it. Everybody's going to the other one. We do updates during the middle of the day. It's such a simple process. I actually have my TAs do it now. I've documented all the TAs do it. I haven't done an update for years. I don't have to. I get a notice. We got an update. They keep track of all the things going on. So we'll get updates once a month, once every other month, depending on how many cert advisories come out. Again, because their box is exposed to the outside, they want to make doggone sure it's secure. That's not going to be how people are going to get into your network. So they do have a pretty heavy update schedule. Okay, so that's a local copy of my database and everything. Now let me come back over here. Start up this. And pull it over here a little bit easier for me to try to get to it. There we go. Okay. That's what the login looks like. That's what the system looks like. No. That's what my basic system looks like. You can see I've got tabs for IPAM, DHCP, DNS. It's got its own workflow. So if you're like Exxon and you have a workflow where somebody requests an IP and somebody else assigns it, they got all that built in. The VLAN manager is basically a really simple spreadsheet. We haven't found it worthwhile, so we don't use it. And then the administration is where you do all your updates and assigning people to groups and things like that. All right. So I can go up here, and I can either get to it this way, or I can go down this way. So I can go down to a tree. You got your own. I got my external, internal domains. This is going to be kind of weird. Or I can go up here, and I can say all my spaces, all my networks, and I can see how full they are, how much been assigned. The ones that are totally full are ones that typically, this is a higher up network, and then this one uses up all the addresses inside that one. So I've got 2 layers here. I can name them. So I got servers, I've got my iSCSI network. If I get out to a school, let me go down a little bit here. So all my schools are done the same. I've got NSD public old, because we're in the process of doing some changes, NSD net, my voice, isolation, a setup network for the Macs that get initially imaged and stuff. And they're all identical. So once I get one of those set up and tested, I just, boom, let's go do everybody. Dirt simple. If I go into DNS, there's all my DNS servers that I managed. My AD1 is my top one. This thing that's kind of smart, this is what they call a virtual server. This is one of the cool things about this product is that when I have a smart server, if I need to add on another one underneath it, I just join it to the smart domain and immediately it's totally configured. This thing will push out all the configuration data. So when I created this guy up here, which is my external one up in Amazon, all I had to do is say, oh, okay, if I want to put another server up in Amazon or perhaps Azure, because I want redundancy, right? I would create the box in Azure. I would throw the appliance up there. I would then go into here and say, you now join this virtual smart server. That's all I do. I've got a completely set up DNS, DHCP server, everything. Literally 5 minutes. For me, I do this once and then never touch it, right? But it is really nice on how it does. I also use this thing for my NTP services. They have it built in. I figure NTP is just as important as DNS, so this is my NTP server for everybody. So if I was to go up to here, no, all networks, add, no. If I drill down into it, it won't ask me all these initial questions because it will already know I'm in the like internal IP, right? But I'm at the top level, so I'm going to drill down. Oh, those are old ones. Those are old network. That's what I want. No class, it's not going to be DHCP. Oops, cancel. Make sure I got this right. So it will guess at a network address that you want to use. You notice that it assigns the domain name to it. If I wanted to pick a different domain name, I can go down here and say I don't want to inherit that from a higher level. And you can see now I can pick all the various domain names that I own and run that are zones on my server. If I try and do that, I can put notes on everything. This is really useful. You come back 5 years and what in the heck is that IP there for? Why is that device on my network? You go look in the notes. So usually whenever we add something, we throw something in there. If nothing else, it's a contact name. You know, like we've got sprinkler systems and stuff. And we'll say, oh, Rainbird is the sprinkler system controller for Bothell High School. Contact so-and-so. I can throw that in the notes, right? I can't spell. I can add aliases to it. So I've got my box and I got a whole bunch of C names or something. Or I can make 2 A records if I want to do a DNS round robin. Now in this case, I tried to reuse an IP address that already existed. So it says, nope, you can't do that. It's not going to allow me to shoot myself in the foot. Normally what we would do is I would normally drill down into whatever area I want. So I'd go up to like all pools. I say my backup pool, and then I would just click on an address that's open and grab it, so I don't accidentally try to reassign something. Let's go up here really quick. I think this is where it is. Oh, you notice right now you'll see the smart and a whole bunch of other things. If I go display, because you only want to edit it up in the smart, so I hide all the smart members. That shrinks it way down. And go down. This is the firewall, where I can redirect things. So we use IBOS. For somebody to be forced into the IBOS, I have to have some valid IP on the internet that is a fake one. And when IBOS sees that, it will say, oh, you got to go log into the IBOS. This is how we do that. This is also where I would say, hey, let's make the Apple update server disappear. I put a rule in here saying, Apple update server, you are going to go to dev null or something, right? You just don't respond to anything trying to go to that. So this is the firewall. I got all kinds of flexibility here to play with it. Change tracking. I want to check here. So there's all the changes that have been made to that on that A record, right? Help desk 5. I can see who made the changes. It was myself. So I can type an IP or a name or a person, find out what's going on. And if I accidentally delete something or something gets deleted and we didn't want it deleted, I can go in and figure out what the IP is and stick it right back in. So I got full audits.
Does this work with does it work with static addressing in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form to integrate and track that information?
Yeah. So if you do DHCP statics, for example.
Well, not reserved. I'm not talking about DHCP reserved, if that's what you mean. I'm talking about actual static addressing where that system might be registered in your Microsoft, so Active Directory DNS.
Yeah.
Does it
Yeah.
pull
So
that back to where you can track it and put notes
I
on
actually
it?
this. Oops.
Because what I'm thinking of is we're still dealing with like an old static database, and it's not up to date because nobody tracks them properly. So
That's coming directly off the AD server.
okay, it's pulling it from the
I'm talking to and controlling my AD server, my domain controller that's running DNS. I can throw statics in there. I can let fire up my Windows box and it'll register itself with it.
Yeah, okay.
And create a static in there. It's no different.
And you can put notes and things on it.
Yeah, you can put notes in here. Awesome. Yeah, isn't that cool? It's really nice. Okay, where was I in my little demo? Oh, yeah. Searching. Oh, global search, right? So that says these are all the addresses that have got help desk in it. You might notice there's a whole bunch of them up there with weird numbers after it. Our web help desk went through a very miserable crash, and I right now have it scattered along about 4 different machines. And basically next Wednesday, everything's going to end up on help desk 5, and all the other ones are going to disappear. We're basically hung, as baling wire right now, holding together our help desk system. It's rather scary. But this is all the stuff that's in the IPAM database. Then I get to see all the stuff that's in my DNS database and all my reverse zones, all my C names, okay? And if it was DHCP, I'd have a section for all the DHCP stuff would show up. I can then click on any of these things see the basic information, or I click on the little blue thing, it takes me right to the full record where I can edit it and change it and make whatever I want to it. I pretty much never touch DNS and DHCP. I do everything through the IPAM interface. I make a change there, it pushes it out everywhere else. Keeps it all in sync. I don't have to do anything. The only thing I touch DNS would be if I want to change a text record, something like that, right? Change tracking, we've done that. Oh, okay. Show reports. Let's go do that one next. I can get not much statistics now because it's not live, but you can get all kinds of statistics about how things are being used around your network. We use this mostly in trying to plan for our next IP reconfiguration. How much we're thinking, oh, okay, our use on our HVAC and security systems, that's going really big. We need to give them more space, right? Okay. We're just about done. So if you go up to, is this Chrome? NSD, that guy. So this is a REST client, the standard REST client. And hopefully, did it remember things? Oh, maybe it didn't. Everything got blown. Oh, here we go. Okay. So this is my login and the password. And let's kill that. This works. And guess what? It's saying I have 2 sites. Response. Where's my response? Yeah, I have a total of 2 sites, basically external and internal. But I can get any information I want from there. So if you've ever played with REST APIs, this little tool that you can download into Chrome, and there's one for Firefox, are just heavenly. Because you can actually try them out. You know, you can send a request and see if you get any data back. I use it a lot when I'm trying to figure out how some vendors put together their API that I want to go talk to. We do this with our mail filter, our spam filter, this box, our Zimber server, email server. So just 2 other things I wanted to show you. Oh, no. Wrong directory. Let's go back over here. Local directory. Nope, I don't have that. Okay, let's get that. So I'm going to log out, and then we're going to log in as a different user. Uh-oh. There we go. This is my help desk view. You notice they don't get access to hardly anything, and really the only thing they can change is the ACLs. They can't even see the rest of the system, right? They can see some of the DHCP stuff. They have to see that to get to the ACLs. They can't make any changes. This is the only thing they can actually change. So this enables me to limit who gets what access to the system. So the first user I logged in was IPM admin. That's the master user. That's the system architect, right? And I've given myself the same privileges. My server team, no. They can see everything, but they can only change IP addresses and see names and things. I don't want them accidentally screwing up one of my subnets and bringing a school down. The help desk team can only change this.
What level, I'm kind of interested on the admin side where the level of the delegation, so like within a specific DNS zone, for example.
Oh, you can,
you,
this thing is actually pretty good on that.
Like things that you can't do natively with AD DNS delegation without, you know, programmatically scripting something.
Admin. Let me see if I can show you that.
Like, does it give you access to record types, or is it based on?
Basically, you pick the users, and then you pick the service you want them to have access to. And then inside of that, where is it here? Edit. I'm missing something. Where is it now? That's the group. Oh, here. Then you can pick what bits you want them to have access to. So I explicitly say in there what menu item I want you to see and have access to. It's really granular.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you can pretty much say, hey, guess what? You can only see this zone.
And you can give them read or write access.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically you could assign that to a group and then just add or remove people to that group.
Yeah. Once you get the group set up with the permission, then you just throw people in and out of it as you need. Yeah. We actually have it tied into our Active Directory, so people log in with their normal Active Directory password, except for IPM admin. In case my AD goes down, I've got that one local account that I can still get in as. Anything they do is fully audited. So if somebody complains or somebody says, no, I don't think I did that, I go back and say, yeah, says you did it. I don't mind you doing it. I don't mind people making mistakes. That's human. What I do mind is you making the mistake over and over again. I expect you to learn from it, right? And that's how we go about doing it. We're never here to go beat on people. We're here to say, hey, my documentation must be incredibly screwed up if you keep making this mistake. What can we do to make the documentation better, right? So that's pretty much what I got. So question time, yeah.
So back to the ACLs.
Yeah.
So when you put the MAC address of the client in there, and that's given, so that's what's restricting users from getting onto the network is having.
Yeah. So basically, this is really hokey and hacky because we don't have network access control. So what we do is, if you want to get on our private network, you have to be in that ACL list. So what happens is the DHCP server will not provide an IP address on that network unless your MAC address is in that list. If you are smart enough to assign a static, you're on our network. I can't stop you.
By reservation only in the entire.
What?
By IP or MAC address reservation only. The whole.
Yeah. It's basically my MAC address reservation.
Okay.
You know, you've got to have your, and this is for the private network that has access to lots of things. My public network, have at it. But public network doesn't get access to our internal resources.
Does it span all your servers?
Yeah.
Can you make it specific to this?
Yes. I could set it up to be only specific. This is a hierarchical system, so I can set a rule like the ACLs right now are set at the DHCP server level. I could set it at a scope level, whatever. So for example, you can also set all these options. We've got phones, right? IP phones. They have weird options with them. I had to create a special option for my IP phones. That depends upon every subnet because it goes to a different server or something based on the subnet it's on. So what I found, I don't like to sit there and type things into Excel spreadsheets because I will type things wrong, guaranteed. I'm a human and my typing's bad. I wrote a little Perl script that basically says, okay, I want you to create one row that looks like this and then duplicate it but change the subnet on each future one. And I've got that set up so that when they tell me, when my network gal tells me how she wants it set up in DHCP and DNS, I basically say, okay, let's do it on the test network. And then once I get that set, let's go through all my networks and we'll do the same thing. It creates this big spreadsheet. I suck it into this box and bingo, I'm done. And if it fails, I reverse it right back out. So, like I said, we've been pretty happy with it. It really has reduced the amount of work that we have to do. Any other questions about this particular product or IPAM or DDI in general?
You talked about I think it was subnet reconfiguration. You were able to do it in 5 minutes or revert if you screwed up.
Yeah.
Are your lease times really short then? Or?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the subnet reconfiguration, we don't care if they have an IP address.
Okay.
When they go back and get another one, they'll get it in the new subnet.
Yeah.
So we don't, like you notice I had a bunch of old subnets lying around.
Yeah.
I keep those around. And then when everybody comes off of them, they disappear.
So you need to work pretty closely with your network team.
Well, I have to because they're the ones that set up all the routers to support it.
Yeah.
So
they're doing sub-interfaces.
they have to log into every router and make changes. Like I say, for her to do our district, it's like 8 hours or something of work. For me, it's 5 minutes. I'm very fortunate, very, very fortunate, because she doesn't have a tool like this that'll do it for her. Yes?
You made a comment about how it seems like it would be difficult to transition from one platform to another. It seems like all these platforms are doing is controlling other systems, where you could turn this off, and all your DHCP and DNS is still happening in the real systems that are providing those services. You start a new one, point it to those, and you would just lose all the logging.
You would lose all of that. You would lose all the training you do on this interface versus the other. Also, if you start using the API, that's where it really kills you. So if I start making heavy use out of the API on this thing, then I'm not going to want to change. But even right now, we've looked at it and we say, well, maybe we should change or something. And we're not going to, because this thing does everything we want at a price point we can't afford. I don't know how much man and mice would cost for a Microsoft district, but it might be a good fit. Or SolarWinds maybe they'll actually support their product better than they do help desk. I have no idea. Any other questions about DDI or IPAM management?
What led you down this path? Obviously, you had a ton of IP addresses, but you also mentioned some problems you were encountering?
We had problems with duplicate IPs. We pretty much had all the problems that were showed in the first slide.
Okay.
A big problem from my boss's viewpoint was I was the only one that knew how that bind system worked and could make changes to it. So if I went on a backpack for 5 days and they needed to make a change, it didn't happen. And that caused headaches. This is a GUI. Anybody with the rights can get in there and make changes. Another big problem was the fact that the server team was spending a chunk of time doing all the adding, removing things to the ACL list. Now the help desk team can do it. People don't have to wait. It makes people happier. I got this device. I'm trying to put it on the network right now, like maybe an IPTV in a teacher's classroom or something. They call up help desk. Oh, we got to wait till the server team. Well, the server team's busy dealing with this hot thing. It's going to be 2 hours before we get back to you. Doesn't make the teacher very happy, right? Now the help desk can just, oh yeah, here you go. Off you go. So from a service level viewpoint, from a redundancy type viewpoint, it just made a lot of sense for us. We were just banging our head too much. And then the spreadsheet was so far out of date with what reality was. We had a huge problem there. And I think the biggest driver was we did a big IP reconfiguration, and we're thinking, how are we going to get this thing done? So that's when we started looking at these other options.
Did you say your external DNS, those are your own VMs? Or?
Yeah, so again, this particular product is really nice. It supports pretty much anything out there. They come with their own version of bind. They actually come with their own version of 3 different DNS servers. So if bind happens to have a very major security issue, I switch to a different one, which is really cool. But what I did is I actually started up a CentOS VM in Amazon, and then I went ahead and threw on bind, and now that's being controlled by this. Again, they can manage other things, so I don't have to worry about anything.
Could maybe manage, like, if you had your DNS, your external DNS in GoDaddy or something like that.
Not GoDaddy, because you don't have access to all the tables. GoDaddy controls that.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. It has to be something you own.
APIs, right?
Right. So it has to be something that you own. Now, I could say, well, no, I couldn't. Because I actually own my own DNS, and I totally run it. So those records I need to control. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that some of these products have DDoS type protection. Is
Yeah.
that just built in, or is there an interface you have to?
Well, on mine, it's the firewall.
Okay.
So I can say, hey, drop everything from these people.
So you have to see it happening from some other.
I have to see it happening somehow,
okay.
yeah. We normally don't deal with that. We usually push that out in the network layer, because if the problem is they're filling your pipe to the internet, by the time I see it, it's too late. I need to block it somewhere upstream. So we work with our upstream providers to block it. It's not much fun when it happens, I'll tell you that, because it's really, really hard to block a distributed DDoS attack. It is just really difficult. And if you have one of those, Kent had one several years ago, and they gave a presentation here about it. And we had that one that happened just like clockwork for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and would take this one school offline. I have no idea how those kids did their test, online testing. So some of the downsides to technology. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're not quite done yet. Oh, here. Yeah.
Can you give us some kind of cost range for this?
Yeah. This was $21,000 over 7 years. We took it out of capital because we combined our first. $21,000 over 3 years. We took.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah, we took it out of our capital budget so I can roll my first 3 years of maintenance into it.
Yeah.
After that, I think it's $1,000 a year or something like that, maybe $2,000 a year.
Can you have any number of servers?
No. I am limited to my 3 servers. They charge by server, but I'm unlimited on subnets or everything else.
Okay.
And that's why I have my 2 servers that have got the split DNS. That is, that external internal thing. That's a little bit harder to manage.
When you say limited by servers,
Yeah.
what's a server?
It's basically
Each DNS server?
administration. No,
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
a server. Where are my servers? Remote manager.
Or is it their virtual
That.
private servers?
It's physical boxes. It's their physical instance of their box. So I've got, as you can see,
It's not your source.
I basically have got 2 here. SS1. No, I've got 3. SS1, 2, and 3. I'm not sure why I've got 2 records in there, but I've got 3 of them. They call their product Solid Server. So me being brilliant said Solid Server, good. SS1 is my database. SS2 and 3 are my DNS/DHCP servers. Each of those does both external and internal. If I had more money, I would have 4 of those, and I would have 2 do external and 2 do internal. It's a lot easier to set up and a little bit easier to manage. But once you get it set up, we don't really notice much of a difference. You won't see on here my external servers like the AD. They have a little connector they charge a couple $100 for or $500 for or something to do that. And the same one with the one up in the cloud. I pay a little bit extra for the privilege to control that through this one pane of interface. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a Galaxy tab. The vendor was really nice. Basically, I essentially told the vendor saying, hey, I'm going to give a talk on IPAM, and I really like your product. And they said, what can we ship you? I'm not kidding. So what we're going to do, how many people are going? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 28 people. So let's do this. We're basically going to Python random dot run 29. Python script will generate a random number. I'm going to start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're just going to rotate down, and somebody's going to end up with a really nice Galaxy tab. Seem legit? Okay. What this does, I said there are 28 people. This will generate a random number between 1 and 28. Okay. Who's the magic person? Number 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I would appreciate, because the vendor was really nice, lots of swag and anything. If you don't mind, they would really appreciate just a call from you guys. They wanted a name in the list, and if you want to send a mail to me, I'll pass it on. But I like them. They're good people.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Tell him about
I enjoyed it. That was good.
Thank you.